I guess that one reason we were just talking about why people aren't joining this subtopic is either they don't know to talk about authentication challenges, or they have no issues. So I just don't know exactly what the goal for this subtopic is currently, since if people don't have a lot of challenges they're facing with, or if the networks are kind of handling their authentications pretty commonly across different platforms. If everybody's using Google as one of their authentication platform, is that sufficient for this group? Or I don't know. For NIH, we do use ERA Commons, but for other international participants, I'm not sure what their common method of authentication is. So I will open it to Bill and to chime in here.
Yeah. So what we're doing on HubMap is we're using a service authentication service.
You for a second, and then I'm going to slip out and see if I can just see if I can get anybody else to help you here. But I would suggest you at least have a conversation about what you have, and then even if the questions are about how do we find out what people's problems really are, that's a start, maybe as a direction to go. And I'll be back to you.
Okay, sounds good.
All right.
Yeah. So Erika, on HubMap, we're using a OAuth service from Globus, the Globus folks. I don't know if you heard them.
Yep, I know.
That lets you basically go back to your institutional identity provider, and ERA Commons is actually one of those identity providers. So is NIH. So if you could log in with your NIH credentials, or you could log in with the ERA Commons, and that's what we've sort of stuck with for now. It gives both a lot of flexibility, but it also lets people use single sign-on back to their institution, and then we're relying on their institution where we have our data use agreements signed against to say we know this person and we know that they are who they say they are, kind of thing, from an identity point of view. So that's what we're doing there, and so we've put that OAuth piece in. It's in through our whole infrastructure piece. Any like APIs that we're writing, we take the tokens from that, and then for data download we use upload and download. We use the Globus services for data upload and download, which uses that same auth piece, and then we can using groups we can control access to anything there. So that's what we're doing. We decided early on for data access that we don't, so the Globus Auth does allow for Google authentication and some other kinds of things like that, but we decided not to allow those for data access because anyone can get a Google account and log in, and we don't really know that they are who they say they are.
Right.
So that's where we actually allow access to our just informational portal with Google accounts and things, but we don't allow access to data.
Makes sense. Does HubMap also have controlled access data, I guess? I presume you do.
Yeah, we do. So we have anything, well, I mean, part of it's not, we haven't done our first data release yet, so part of this is still in discussion, but we have, so anything that's human sequence data is definitely controlled access there, and we're requiring two-factor authentication to get into that stuff. There's also up in the air right now is donors that we get tissue from that is used to generate the data. Depending on how they're consented, we might have different levels of access there, but we haven't. I mean, on the technical side, we've worked out how that works now, but on the more of the gathering the information and deciding what levels of consent there are and what different consents there are, and we haven't worked out the whole administrative side of that.
So do you guys tie into dbGaP?
Yes.
As well
for the sequence. Yes.
For the sequences.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. We so I'm part of NCI's Cancer Research Data Commons. I don't know if you've heard. So we basically is a data commons for NCI data for public release. So secondary data sharing to public happens through our data commons. And H10 will have their own portal and their own spaces, which they will have their own methods of authentication and all of that. But once that data is published, it comes through our cancer research data commons that's run by NCI. And then through that process, we also use the OAuth and authentication and authorization processes that are tied to dbGaP. So I think they're
so
pretty.
When users authenticate, what account are they using when they come through?
So it's either ERA Commons or Institute. It's kind of very similar to what you have.
Okay.
But we're using Fence, and we also do allow Google accounts for access.
Okay. I assume if you're allowing Google account, you're somehow making sure you know that person and you tie that person to that account.
Yeah, so open access data is fine with the Google account. You don't need to log in to access those type of data, but for controlled access data, then you do have to have a institution affiliated account.
I see. Yeah. So our thing is you have to have an institutional account or ERA Commons. If we can't tie to your institution's identity provider, then we're allowing ERA Commons.
Makes sense. All right. So what are some of, I guess there were a list of questions or problems for the topic that can be solved. So does HubMap also have international participants?
We do, yeah.
Okay.
Not a lot, but we do have, we have people coming from England and from the Netherlands. I could get the institutions there.
Okay.
So Sanger Institute and TU Delft University in the Netherlands, I think, are the ones that come to mind. It's a small percentage, but we do have those. Yeah.
Okay.
And I would think longer term we would have more, because we haven't done a data release yet. So once we do a data release, we'll have people coming in from all over the place wanting access to the data.
Right.
So we haven't gotten any of this. These are all people who are part of the consortium and are doing the stuff now.
And you guys are making it available through Globus? Is that kind of your primary platform for data download or?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. We do have compute facilities at the Pittsburgh Supercomputing Center. That's where Robin is that if people want to, and the data is available there mounted on those facilities, so people can log in there and run their tools against the data that's there. Yeah.
Okay.
It's not, they wouldn't have to download it via Globus. It's already there.
Right. So can you bring in like cloud compute resources to that, or do you have to use that? Okay.
Yeah. Well, we haven't done this yet, but the overall goal is, sort of cloud agnostic. Like if you want to go to Google and run something, you can move the data there and use it. If you want to go to AWS, the same kind of thing. We don't have data sitting at the cloud providers yet, but I think when we see the need for that we will have data sitting.
Okay.
Maybe not all the data,
right?
But the main repository, all the data is always at the PSC. I think someone estimated at the beginning of this that we're going to have at least 10 petabytes of data.
Okay.
And it was going to get costly to store that all on multiple clouds, have multiple copies of it stored around the different places. That's why we.
So how do you envision having other programs like doing cross-analysis with your data? So will they just come in from, if say like Human Cell Atlas data is currently sitting on Terra or other AWS platforms, do you foresee them doing?
Yeah, so they can either move the data to where they need it,
Mm-hmm.
and then just delete it. You know, one of the things with the cloud, you know, access we have, we found a lot of the cost comes with pulling it back out of the cloud. So if you pull it in, it's free, and you pay for however long it sits there. So you pull in whatever data you need, compute on it, you know. So pull it in via Globus, compute on it with your data that's already there, and then just delete it. Because then the you know, you just blow it away, and then it's not. So then you don't get the outjust charges or whatever they call it, you know.
The egress charges
egress,
and storage. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
It's interesting to see how others work. Go ahead, Tim.
Hi, Tim.
Hi. You guys are a small group.
Yeah.
Are you happy to stay and see? I know there are still probably 5% of the people who are having technical issues, but I don't imagine you're going to get more than 4 or 5 at best. If you're having a productive conversation,
I think we're having a good conversation. We're just catching up on what each other does. I'm not sure we have enough people across other things to really be productive or do whatever we need. I don't see the conversation we had already. I don't see any, you know, we're both doing our thing and it seems compatible, and we're
with each other.
Yeah.
Well, if between the two of you, collaborating would be a useful thing for the community, even just sharing information, whatever, then open the Google Doc and start saying, okay, what are the kind of things that we could be useful around? And if you think, we're probably not going to be collaborating going forward, even though this is interesting, then maybe pick another subtopic in this topic and pop in there and see what's going on. So I leave it to you to decide. And you never know, you might create you're going to be back together again for about an hour after the break. You might come up with something, post it, and 50 people may comment on it, and you may be able to build a group that way. So I leave it up to you. Recognize the objective and what's useful for you, and decide whether to stick for a bit or jump.
Okay.
And do you know how to navigate back if you need to?
Yep.
Good. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. So what would you like to do? I think between HubMap and H10 or NCI, we probably have a pretty well aligned system for authentication.
What's the name of the system you said you used? Fence?
Fence, yeah. So I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's University of Chicago, Gen 3.
And it's spelled like Fence?
Yeah, Fence.
F-E-N-C-E, okay.
Yeah. If you search for Gen 3, GEN3, in Chicago, you'll find their website.
Okay.
So NCI uses sort of like a core infrastructure called Data Commons Framework, part of the Gen 3. And within that, Fence is one of the mechanisms for authentication and authorization that all of the components within our system has to use for. So it's a one ANA.
Okay, and it uses OAuth as well. Okay.
Yes. Yep. So if you want to take a look at that, I highly doubt that we're going to get a lot of attraction on this topic.
I don't think so.
Because the other topic, I think like common interface might touch upon authentication or some unified method of author. So maybe we could go to other subtopics and.
That's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
As well.